However well-trained or numerous an army was, success could only be achieved if it were properly supplied and equipped. And Roman logistics provided one of the mainstays that sustained the empire and made it possible for its armies to conquer and hold territory for centuries. This video looks at the different logistical operations carried out by the Roman legions and how this was instrumental in their victory in battle. The Roman army invested in warehouses and depots known as horea, built inside military camps. These stored enormous quantities of grain, salted meat, and other long-lasting food items. Through the Punic War, 218 to 201 BC, Rome relied on warehouses established in strategic regions to keep its troops sufficiently supplied, especially during drawn-out campaigns against Hannibal in Italy and Africa. This supply network meant that they could overcome the attrition tactics of Hannibal, who intended to destroy Rome's logistical architecture. Besides their use in campaigns, the horea were also crucial in peacetime, securing the stability of the legions deployed in distant provinces. These warehouses allowed the legions to preserve their military readiness, even in quiet times. This proved crucial for Rome to exercise control over vast stretches of territory, where barbarian rebellions or invasions could suddenly break out. The Romans also found methods to store and distribute supplies in a mobile way, crucial in fast-moving campaigns or in difficult terrain. Crassus, during the Parthian campaign 53 BC, when marching across the desert to face the Parthians, failed to adequately plan the storage of water and food for his troops, ultimately resulting in his army's dehydration, starvation, and defeat. The Romans did arrange rudimentary medical evacuation systems, where wounded soldiers were swiftly ferried to safe areas to be treated. During the Battle of Pharsalus, 48 BC, as Julius Caesar's forces confronted Pompey's, the Roman efficiency in caring for the wounded was striking. Following the battle, Caesar quickly ensured that his wounded soldiers were evacuated from the battlefield and brought to the rear, where they could be given medical attention. The Romans were the first to design structures that served as field hospitals, known as valetudinaria. These were built in Roman camps next to the site of the battles, guaranteeing that the soldiers could be cared for immediately. It was essential for the Romans to carry medical supplies, such as bandages, plant-based medicines, and surgical instruments, to be able to treat the wounded and sick during their campaigns. These supplies were shipped along with the armies, often as part of general supply caravans. The Medici, military doctors, and Capsari, auxiliaries tasked with carrying medical bandages and other items, ensured that the supplies were always on hand for treating the wounded at once. One of Rome's most widely used strategies for replenishing their supplies during prolonged campaigns was foraging, that is, gathering resources in enemy territory. This tactic meant that the Roman army obtained its provisions directly from the lands it conquered, cutting down on the need to haul great quantities of supplies over long distances. Caesar often used foraging during his Gaul campaigns as a way of keeping his troops stocked up while advancing through enemy territory. During the Battle of Gergovia, 52 BC, Caesar had difficulty maintaining a continuous supply line due to the mountainous terrain and Gallic resistance. He ordered his troops to forage in nearby villages for food and water. Foraging allowed Caesar to stretch out his campaign, even in difficult conditions. Rationing was vital in campaigns that required prolonged time on the battlefield to ensure that troops were kept supplied for months, or even years. It involved the regulated distribution of food, water, and supplies according to the army's needs and the expected time span of the campaign. A prime historical example of efficient rationing took place during the Battle of Alesia, 52 BC. Caesar knew that keeping his troops supplied while isolating the enemy would be the perfect key to victory during this prolonged siege. As Vercingetorix's army grew ever hungrier and his supplies ran out, Caesar took painstaking care to steward his own resources, implementing a rationing system to guarantee that his legions could withstand a prolonged siege. This tight supply control allowed the Romans to keep motivated until the Gauls were finally forced to surrender. Transporting these resources to the legions on campaign was one of the most important tasks in supply management. Roman roads were accurately constructed and long-lasting, providing fast and safe transportation for troops and supplies. These routes connected Rome to its provinces, assuring that armies could be moved efficiently and that supplies could reach the battlefields, including regions distant from the center of the empire. Germanicus's campaign against the Germanic tribes, 14 to 16 AD, provides a good illustration of the importance of logistical infrastructure. As he retaliated for Varus's defeat in the Teutoburg Forest, Germanicus turned to the Roman road network to swiftly move his troops and reinforcements. He deployed supply caravans that made use of both pack animals, including horses and mules, and ox carts to convey large volumes of supplies. Apart from permanent roads, the Roman army was renowned for its ability to build temporary infrastructure in record time, which gave a crucial advantage in difficult terrain or during long campaigns. Temporary bridges, impromptu roads, and even forts were built by the legions to ensure the safe and uninterrupted advance of troops and supplies. While the land supremacy of the Roman army is largely recognized, its naval fleet was equally crucial in securing the military success and stability of the empire. Controlling sea routes, protecting supplies, and the rapid transportation of troops and equipment were fundamental tasks undertaken by the Roman Navy. One of the Roman Navy's main functions was the protection of supply routes. As they relied heavily on sea trade and naval routes to move grain, weapons, food, and other supplies to their legions, the Navy was essential to keep these resources safe. Pirates and enemy fleets posed a constant threat to supply routes in the Mediterranean, known to the Romans as Mare Nostrum, our sea, and keeping sea control was a strategic priority. One classic example of this demand for naval protection occurred during the civil war between Octavian and Mark Antony. The Battle of Actium, 31 BC, is a hallmark of naval logistics and the control of supply routes. Octavian's fleet, led by Marcus Agrippa, cut off Mark Antony and Cleopatra's supply chains, blocking access to the resources required to support his army. In isolating Antony, Octavian prevented him from obtaining reinforcements and supplies, thereby demoralizing his troops and forcing a decisive naval battle. Aside from the Mediterranean, Rome also frequently used river fleets to carry supplies and troops in regions where rivers played a crucial role in military operations. The Danube, the Rhine, and the Nile were all natural logistical routes that allowed for the speedy movement of resources and troops, especially in difficult-to-reach areas by land. Siege logistics was one of the most complex and crucial aspects of Roman military strategy. As opposed to conventional battles, sieges needed patience, careful planning, and the ability to keep troops supplied for extended periods while isolating the enemy. Putting up with a siege's harsh surroundings while depriving the opponent of resources was the main element in victory. A Roman commander's main concern in a siege was to provide his own troops with continuous supplies like food, water, ammunition, and materials for building war machinery. Besides keeping his own troops supplied, one of the most used tactics during sieges was to cut off the enemy's supply routes. During the Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BC, Scipio Africanus successfully used this strategy in the siege of Utica, 204 BC. Laying siege to the Carthaginian city of Utica, Scipio blockaded all supply routes, both by land and sea, totally cutting off the defenders' access to external resources. With time, the lack of food and reinforcements sapped the Carthaginian troops' morale, and the city was forced to surrender. During sieges, the Romans also depended on their ability to build and transport siege machines such as battering rams, catapults, and ballistae, requiring an efficient logistical system for their transportation, mounting, and maintenance. This was exemplified by the siege of Masada, 72 to 73 AD, during the Great Jewish Revolt. Masada was a stronghold built on top of a mountain, which is why the Romans faced the challenge of breaking through these high defenses. An enormous siege ramp was built by them, using thousands of tons of earth and stones to penetrate the fortress walls. Building this ramp, along with assembling assault towers and battering rams, was one of the Romans' greatest logistical siege achievements. Efficient transport of heavy weapons depended heavily on Roman engineers, specialized in building, maintaining, and operating war machines. Not only did these engineers design and build the siege weapons, but they also managed to ensure that they were dismantled and reassembled correctly during the campaigns. In certain cases, Roman engineers built temporary roads or bridges to facilitate the transportation of heavy weapons. We can see that Rome's superiority in military logistics was one of the decisive factors that ensured Roman victory in decisive battles and prolonged sieges, cementing Rome's military dominance in the ancient world. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one!